welcome to a programme that's all about pulses. And what are pulses? Well, they're an incredible gift of nature, I think, because with the abundance of vegetables in the summer months and the autumn months, these seem to have been designed specifically for drying and keeping for later, so that in the lean winter months when there aren't any fresh vegetables around, or not many, out come the lovely pulses. They're beautiful to look at, they're beautiful to cook with, and I'm really going to enjoy showing you some recipes.
Pulses have many virtues, but best of all is that they soak up other flavours. So using them alongside meat can make the meat go a lot further. Pulses are divided into families. There's the lentil family with lots of glorious colour, and then the beans, which make up the largest group. We'll be dealing with them later, but we're going to start with the pea family. Whole marrow-fat peas have all the concentrated flavour of peas. These are split peas next. They come in yellow or green and are wonderful for making soups. And these are chickpeas, full of lots of lovely texture and flavour.
And the first recipe I want to show you is using whole dried marrow-fat peas. It's a very old-fashioned recipe which I'm trying to get a revival on. This is old-fashioned boiled bacon, smoked bacon with peas pudding. And peas pudding is a wonderful thing, needs a revival. Now, what you use in the recipe is 6 ounces of dried marrow-fat peas, and they do look very boring and shriveled. But all pulses, all dried vegetables, have to be soaked before they can be used, so that all the moisture that's gone out of them in the drying can go back into them. There are only one group that don't need to be soaked, and that's split peas or lentils, but we're going to look at that later on. So, dried, boring peas, once they've been soaked overnight, become plump and luscious and look much, much more interesting. Now, if you forget, there is a quick way, and the quick way is to put them into a pan, cover them with water, bring them up to the boil them for 10 minutes, and then when you've boiled them for 10 minutes, switch the heat off and let them soak for 2 hours. So that's the quick way, but actually it's much easier to just put them in the bowl before you go to bed, leave yourself a note on the fridge, and that's the best way to do it. So, when they've been soaked, the next thing that happens is they need to be drained, and then they're going to go into a saucepan, like that, with a small onion that's been just cut into quarters, a sprig of thyme and a bay leaf to give some flavour. And then I'm going to turn the heat on, and I'm going to just cover them with cold water, just to sort of barely cover them, and then bring them up to simmering point and simmer them quite gently with the lid on for 1 hour. So we'll let them simmer away gently now. Right, so here we've got the cooked peas, and you can see here they're not cooked to the sort of mushy, smashed stage because they're going to have more cooking. So you remove the thyme and the bay leaf, and then to the peas we're going to add a beaten egg and an ounce of butter and a good seasoning of pepper. I'm not going to put any salt in because there's going to be some salt in the bacon that's going to supply the amount of salt we need, but I am going to put this, very important, and that is some freshly grated nutmeg. And I've said it millions of times before, but I'll say it again, has to be always freshly grated. It's no good when it's ready ground because it loses its soul. So there we go. We're just going to mash that up now. Right, they're sort of slightly mashed up, but there's still some texture in there and still some identifiable peas, and that's really what you want. Now what we're going to do, to make peas pudding, you need to have either a large square of muslin or gauze from the chemist, and this is about 16 inches square. And what we're going to do is tie them up at the top here with a little piece of string, making sure that there is a bit of a gap there because they're going to expand while they're finishing cooking. The thing about pulses is they do take long cooking, but it's worth it in the end. So now we're going to take that over and pop it in the saucepan and just tie the string up to the edge of the saucepan like this so that the peas pudding is suspended in the water. There we go. Now, the star is this. This is an old-fashioned cut of smoked collar of bacon. Now, you won't be able to buy this in a supermarket. You'll have to order it from a butcher or a specialist supplier. But it's something that's got so much flavour, and I would really like you to give this a try, because I'm afraid that we're going to lose all these lovely old-fashioned recipes and old-fashioned cuts, and life will get blander and blander if we're not careful. So that goes in next to the peas pudding in the saucepan. Just need to be fitted together. And I'm going to add a carrot, an onion stuck with cloves, and a couple more bay leaves. And then I'm just going to pour in enough water to cover that. Just to barely cover it. And then this, put the heat on now, bring it up to the boil. And as soon as it comes up to the boil, turn the heat down and let it simmer very gently for 1¼ hours. And I've just seen something I should have put in and I didn't. It's sitting there in my little dish, which is 6 whole black peppercorns. So we'll put those in and then lid on, and we now need to wait 1¼ hours. Right, now the time is up, and what I'm going to do now is just remove the bacon from the water and transfer it to the plate, like that. And then we need to just snip the string and get the peas pudding out, so you can have a look at that, and bring that over. Right, I'm just going to cut the string off here to open it out and show you. And so there we have it, our lovely little peas pudding there, sitting up looking proud, and it's got a lovely mealy, crumbly texture. And when you serve it, you carve the bacon, and you just give everybody a spoonful like that.
I like to serve the bacon and peas pudding with a creamy onion and mustard sauce made with some of the bacon stock.
And the recipe I'm going to show you from the lentil family is a recipe using these, the most common lentils, the greeny, browny lentils. Humble, but absolutely lovely when they're transformed into recipes. And the best lentil recipe I've ever come across, and a lot of people agree with me, is a recipe served in a restaurant called the Merchant House in Ludlow. The chef is a famous chef called Sean Hill, and I've managed to persuade him to give me his recipe, which is for scallops served with a lentil sauce. And what we're going to do is start off by making the lentil sauce, or beginning to make it. And I've got here 2 ounces of lentils, and they're cooked in stock for about 40 minutes. Just put in a saucepan covered with vegetable stock, and then in 40 minutes they will have swollen up, and 2 ounces begins to look like that. Then to make the sauce, you start off, as I have here, with half an onion, and you saute the half an onion for about 8 minutes slowly until it's become nice and golden brown, as you can see here. Then I've got here a 1-inch piece of fresh ginger which has been grated, and then behind it is a crushed fat clove of garlic, and that's just going to be blended now with the rest of the ingredients. And now we're getting lots of perfume, lots of wonderful, and more perfumes coming, because in this little pot here, what I've got are cardamom pods, and these are cardamom pods. And when the husks are removed, they have little black seeds, and I had a dessert spoon of these, and which produces this many seeds here. So they're going to go in. And this is going to be followed by 2 large tomatoes, and the tomatoes have been skinned and chopped, quite small. So they're going in next. And then they're just cooked for a minute or 2. And now I'm going to add 2/3 of the lentils. Not all of them, just 2/3 of them, leaving a third behind. And now what's going to happen is this is going to become a sauce by being pureed in a food processor. So we'll take it over to the food processor and just pile it all in. And then I'm going to try and be a bit clever here, and I think you should do this at home when you're making this, and that is just take a wad of kitchen paper and wipe the pan. Wipe the pan, because what I'm then going to do is put the pan back onto a low heat, because later on when I come to the scallops I want them in a hot frying pan, so I'm just going to keep the frying pan over a very low heat to keep it warm. Right, now what's in the jug here is the stock that the lentils were cooked in, and it was half a pint of stock, half a pint of vegetable stock, and this is the stock that was drained from the lentils after they were cooked, so that's going to go in as well. And then we're just going to whiz that now up to a puree. That's right. And now that puree is going to go into a saucepan, so we'll just remove the blade and put it into a saucepan, and then I'll show you what goes in next. The remainder of the lentils, so we've got some pureed and some whole in the sauce, which gives it nice texture and interest. And we'll put the heat on to fairly low, because what's going to happen is the sauce is going to just gently cook a little bit while we cook the scallops. A few more ingredients in the sauce. The juice of half a lemon, 2 ounces of butter, put that in very quickly, and a tablespoon of creme fraiche. And tell you, if you're horrified at that, you can cut it down if you want to. But don't forget, later on in the series, we're going to be looking at Waste Watcher recipes, so I'm going to make up for it later. Take a whisk now, and then just whisk those ingredients together and add some seasoning. And you'll need to taste a bit to see if you've got the seasoning right before you serve it. And then just leave that on a low, gentle heat to sort of melt together while you cook the scallops. And the pan for the scallops is nice and warm, so now I'm going to turn it up to really high. It's got no fat in it, and I'll tell you why. Here are our beauties. Here they are. Lovely fat, juicy scallops. We haven't cooked these before on how to cook, so it's a good opportunity to show you. And they've been prepared, but I've left the coral on. I think it's quite nice to have the coral on the scallops. And the way we're going to cook them is you don't put any fat in the pan, but you put a little bit of oil onto the scallops. And what I've got here is some ground nut oil, or any flavourless oil. You don't want an oil with flavour, because the scallops have got all their lovely flavour. The recipe will serve 6 people as a starter or 3 people as a main course. And what I'm going to do is take these over now to the pan, and it's got to be absolutely as hot as you dare. So in goes the first one. I like to cook about 3 at a time, and then just keep them warm. And I've got to put the seasoning on the scallops, so you mustn't do that, but I can put it on now. And what you need to do is time them just 30 seconds on each side, and then when they've had 30 seconds, flip them over onto the other side give them another 30 seconds. And meanwhile the sauce is just about ready to serve. So I'm going to flick it over now. So while that last 30 seconds cooking is happening, the sauce needs one more ingredient, and that is chopped coriander leaves. So they're going to go in right at the last minute to give that lovely fragrant coriander flavour, and really is one of the greatest sauces ever invented. So 3 scallops per person and the sauce poured over. And the last word on this beautiful sauce is that you can serve it with other fish, any fish you like, or you can serve it with chicken. It's really a very versatile sauce.
This is a luscious vegetarian shepherd's pie. It's made with wee lentils and the first member of the bean family we're looking at, black-eyed beans. It's also got a mashed potato topping made with goat's cheese. Beans are the largest group of all, and one rule here is to ensure that kidney beans have 10 minutes vigorous boiling, as there may be toxins in the skin. With a couple of exceptions, I really don't like tinned pulses, as they lose so much texture and flavour. A chili con carne really shines when made with real kidney beans soaked and cooked at home.
And the next star performer in pulses is this, the humble butter bean. But these are rather special butter beans, and they're called Houdion beans. But if you can't get those, this recipe works with any kind of butter beans that you can buy. They're going to be pre-soaked, and then when they're pre-soaked, they swell up to twice their volume. You'll see that in a minute. But they are going to be star of a really old-fashioned recipe that I'd love to see revived, and that is an English beef stew, classic stew. And I'm just going to run through the ingredients with you. First of all, you need some British beef, but a very special kind of British beef, and that is shin of beef. And it's the lower part of the leg, and what it means is that it does a lot of work, so it gets a lot of connective tissue. And what happens to that connective tissue is it melts with long, slow cooking and gives the most incredible beefy flavour. So what you need to do is to cut it, first of all, I've got 3 pounds, into good chunks like this, because again, we're going to cook it long and slow, so everything needs to be chunky. And then what you do is you toss the pieces of beef in seasoned flour, well seasoned flour, and then just put them all onto a plate. And the good thing about this stew is it's very, very little work, because you don't have to do any pre-browning of the meat. All you do is put it straight into a casserole along with the other ingredients. And here we've got the butter beans that have been pre-soaked, and here we've got vegetables, and all I'm going to do is layer the beef into a casserole. So I'll take about a third of it, put it in the casserole, and then I've got vegetables here. What I've got is small onions, and they're whole, carrots in big chunks, bits of celery in big chunks, and swede in big chunks. And I'm just going to toss those into the flour that's left over from the beef, because what happens is if you toss everything in flour, as it cooks, the flour just gently begins to act and thicken the sauce, so you've got a slightly thickened sauce when it comes out of the oven. So beef first, then some vegetables, then some butter beans, pre-soaked, as I've said, overnight. Then some more beef. You can see just how very, very easy it is. All it is an assembly job. No hard work here. More vegetables. And then more butter beans. And then just a few bits of beef to just tuck in and around there.
This is an 8-pint casserole, by the way, which is quite big.
And it's one of the heavy ones that can go on top of the stove or in the oven. Then we've got some herbs. We've got bay leaves here, 3 bay leaves, and a few sprigs of thyme. And then I'm just going to wipe my hands a little bit now before I add the rest of the ingredients. We're going to need a good amount of salt there, some freshly milled pepper, quite a big amount of that too really, a few good turns. And then the liquid I'm using is dry cider, and I'm using 1.5 pints of dry cider. So that goes in next. And then a flavouring ingredient which we all love, and that's Worcester sauce. I'm going to put a tablespoon of Worcester sauce in. And then it needs to have a really close fitting lid. So what I've done is put some foil around the lid to make sure it fits really snugly.